Okay, so here we are. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. It is our first inaugural guest lecture expert session for Tableau Buddy Sandbox Accelerator program. And we had a meet and greet session where we all connected. We shared what we are doing and what our goals will be. Now, today we have one of our special guest lecturer, Jim, with us. Jim is a multi-time Tableau Visionary Forum Ambassador. He's the co-founder of Tableau Newbie User Group, which has, I think, thousands, more than 5,000 or 6,000 of user base. And he also co-leads Nashville Tug. And he has been using Tableau for so many years. If you have heard of so many people, he has been mentor for some of them. And also, he is one of them who has got the highest points on Tableau forums. That means he's the one who has answered most of the questions, and they are our best answers as well. And that's not easy, actually. So, and today he's going to share his knowledge on order of operation, which is actually a pillar or a cornerstone of how we do things in Tableau. It's one of the most important topics, I feel. And if you don't have enough knowledge about it, then it can be a really tough walk while you're executing things in Tableau. So I'll now open this to Jim. And also, if you feel like you have a question, you can put that in the chat box as well, or you can raise your hand at the end of the session so that we can have all your questions answered. So feel free to take the best of his knowledge and learn from him today. Okay, so thank you so much, Jim. Thank you so much for coming in, and I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Okay, very good. It's great to be with you guys this morning. I'm going to share my screen in just a minute. I see a lot of faces out here and people I know, and I'm thrilled to be talking with you. I didn't realize this was your inaugural meeting. Otherwise, I would have had a cake or something for it. It would have been fantastic. One thing you should know: when I share my screen, I can't see you. I can't see anything that's going on. So I'll take questions at the end. We'll come back out of the presentation. But when I'm making presentations, I can't see you guys. So just be aware of that. And I'm going to share the screen now. Okay. There we go. Now I'll make the obligatory. Will somebody tell me that you can see my screen and it looks like a Tableau workbook?
Yep, we can see your screen, Jim.
Very good. We're going to talk about the order of operations. And I present the order of operations like nobody else in the organization. So don't tell anybody how I do this, because they'll be knocking on the door and saying, Jim, you can't present it that way. You have to present it a different way. Just real quick, a little bit about me. I've known Prasad forever. I was one of his mentors way back in the day. But as mentioned before, I'm a visionary, and I'm one of the forum ambassadors. Been around for a while. I do lead the Nashville Tug as well as the newbie user group. And for all of you out there, if you're not familiar with the newbie group, we'd love to have you come by, see what we're doing. Everybody's welcome. We like to say that everybody's a newbie at heart. Let's start talking about what the order of operations is. And this is the model that I use. Okay, right away you can see it's probably different than maybe some of the ones that you've seen other people use. I like to use this model. It includes all the 10 steps that you see other people use. But I like to look at it broken down into these three groups. The first group, steps 1 and 2, operate at the workbook level as data is being entered into Tableau. All the remaining steps work at the worksheet level, okay? And it's important to understand what happens when you create a worksheet in Tableau. You start out by loading data into Tableau. And it doesn't make any difference where it comes from. It could come from, a database. It could come from a flat file. But wherever, you're going to load some data into Tableau. And that's all the data that is available to that workbook. Now, for each one of your worksheets, you're going to create a data table that's a subset of that total data set. Okay, and you create the structure for that data table by applying dimensions to the rows and columns and then applying filters on those dimensions. Now, y'all can think about that like maybe it looks like an Excel spreadsheet or it looks like a worksheet of some sort. It doesn't really. It looks like a pivoted Excel sheet, but if it helps to think of it as an Excel sheet, you can go ahead and think of it that way. And the headers on that Excel sheet are the dimensions that you place on the rows and columns. Then once you've created the structure for that sheet, all we do after that is we just load it full of values. We put measures in there. We load it through full of values. We do some math, and then we decide what the visual is going to look like. Okay? So think of going through each one of those steps and think of each one of your worksheets having a separate data table. I see questions every day where this concept, people don't understand this concept, but each one of your worksheets has a separate data table that's a subset of the total data set. We're going to use the Superstore data set today. I like to use that because it's the same data set you've got. And in that data set, there are 800 customers, there's about 10,000 records and $2.3 million worth of sales. Just kind of put those in the back of your mind, and we're going to play around with those figures as the day goes on. I want to look at the first two steps in the order of operation. That's step 1 and 2, that's extract filters and data source filters. Those are the ones that operate at the workbook level. And you can use those filter data out of Tableau as you're loading the data source. And you do that because, well, if you're not going to actually use the data and you can filter it out, your data, your workbook is going to be more efficient because it's working with a smaller amount of data. Let's see how that works. Very simply, this is that same data that we were looking at. I can go over here to the data source tab and we're just going to open it up. Okay. And we've got orders in here. We got 10,000 records. I want to put in a filter. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add a filter. And the filter I'm going to add, I'm going to look at a year of order date. I'm look at order date. Okay. And I want to look at the year of order date. And I only want to look at 2023. Now, this, the mechanics of doing this all look pretty familiar. It looks like you're just putting in a dimension filter. And we're going to go ahead and do that. And it says we're only going to keep 2023 data. Now we started with 10,000 rows of data. Once I accept this, you're going to see that we no longer have 10,000 rows of data. There's only 3,400 rows of data out there. And if we go back to this tab and we open it up, we can see, yep, we got 3,379 rows of data. There's $745,000 worth of sales rather than the $2.3 million. Well, we knew how to do that. I mean, you knew how to do it. I knew how to do that. I'm going to back out of this so that we can get back to 10,000 rows of data because I want to go to this next example. You might find yourself in a situation where you say, well, that's great, but I'd like to be able to make that a little more dynamic. I don't want to go in and have to change this every time I do something. Let's take a look at an example here where I want to only look at customers that have $10,000 worth of sales. And I not only want to look at customers that have $10,000 worth of sales on the data I loaded today, but when I update that data, I'd still like this filter to work. There might be different customers, there might be more customers, but I'd like to apply this filter as a data source filter. So that's going to be our filter. We're going to go out here to the data source again. I can open it up, add a filter, and the filter we're going to add is this guy right here. That's the filter we just looked at. And it's a true false, it's a Boolean. We have the fixed customer sales greater than 10,000, and that's a Boolean, so we're going to take it as yes. And when we do that as true, now instead of 10,000 rows of data, we're going to have 418 rows of data. And if we look at that 418 rows of data, I got 21 customers in this current data set that meet that criteria. Now, next month, when that data gets updated, or next quarter when that data gets updated, maybe that number goes up. Maybe it goes 24, 25, something like that. But that filter will work dynamically for you. I'm going to back out of this again so that we can still have our 10,000 rows of data as we look at it. Okay, 10,000 rows of data and the like. Okay, that's data source filters. You can use them in a lot of instances, but remember what they're really doing is they're limiting the amount of data that's actually in Tableau, the data that you can use in your total workbook. Now I want to start looking at these remaining steps, steps 3 through 10. And these operate at the worksheet level. Each one of your worksheets is a data table in itself. And I want to focus right now on steps 3, 4, and 5. And I want to do that for a couple of reasons, because first of all, that's really where the structure for your data table is created. But more importantly, it's where most people make mistakes, whether they're newbies or whether they're experienced users. Most of the time when things aren't working right in their workbook, it's because they've made a mistake here. In the application of context filters, calculating fixed LODs, and application of dimension filters. So let's take a look at those. It's important to think of the order that you're going in. In the order of operation, you go through one time, top to bottom. So context filters are going to be applied in step 3 before sets and fixed LODs and top N are calculated. Dimension filters are going to be applied after those are calculated. Now, I get questions all the time, and they say, well, what's the formula for calculating something that ignores the filters? And if you've ever sent me something like that, you usually get a snarky comment back that Tableau doesn't ignore your data or your filters. You decide when to apply those filters. And you do that right here. You do that by applying context filters or dimension filters to the data. I want to take a look at a couple of examples of how this works and how it might come into play in some of your more advanced calculations. Let's take a look first at something really very simple, very, very straightforward. We do this sort of thing all the time. All I've done here is I've created a worksheet, and I've got sales in here, and I've got sales by subcategory, and I've put on some subtotals and some totals, and there's that $2.3 million that we keep looking at. And then I created this LOD expression. This is just a fixed LOD expression. And all it does is it looks at for each combination of the category and the year of order date, sum the sales. Okay, so if we look here, that's this column, and sure enough, there's at the category level, that's $754,000 worth of sales, and that's what we have in the furniture category, and $731 in office supplies, and $839 in technology. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to come back and I'd like to apply a filter. And we're going to apply a filter here on bookcases. Okay, right now, that filter is right here, and it's a gray filter. And because it's a gray filter, I know that filter is in context. Okay, you can apply that filter in context or not in context. Right here, I can remove it from context, and I'll do that. And now it's a blue filter. Now the filter is a dimension filter. Okay, so as a dimension filter, it's going to be applied down here in step 5 of the order of operation after we calculate that LOD. So let's take out bookcases. Boom. Bookcases are out. Now the total of sales is 639,000, and that filter was applied after the LOD was calculated. So we haven't changed the value of the LOD. It's still $754,000, and the total for the LOD is that $2.3 million that we've looked at previously. But the total for sales after we've filtered out bookcases is $2.2 million worth of sales. Well, that's pretty obvious. I want to apply that same filter in context. I've now made it a gray filter. It's applied in context. I can take out the bookcases again. And now the total for the furniture subcategory is $639,000. And the total of the fixed LOD for furniture is that same value, 639. Okay, because we applied the filter before, right here, we applied the filter before that LOD was calculated. Now, this is the big secret here. That's all you're doing with the context filter. You're either applying the filter before the LOD is calculated, before the sets are calculated, or before the fixed end are calculated. I want to take a look at a couple of other examples here. Let's take a look at this example. And this is very simply an example where I have a, I'm sorry, I've got to pull my set here. I've created a set. And that set is based on this top n parameter. And I've got it set at 5. And as we saw before, sets are determined right here in that same step that fixed LOD is calculated. So once again, if we apply a filter in context, it's applied before the set is determined. If we apply it as a dimension filter, it's after the set is determined. So we'll take a quick look at this. And we said, well, okay, fine. I want to take out chairs. Let's take out chairs. And in context, I want to see the top 5 values. So let's take out chairs. And I still have 5 values, okay? Because I took out chairs. I filtered it out of the data table, before I determined the top end, and I wanted 5, so I still have 5. If, on the other hand, I filter it out after the top end are calculated as a dimension filter, and we're just going to take out chairs again, I now only have 4 because we determined the set containing 5 and it included chairs, but then we came back after and filtered out chairs, so there's only 4 remaining in that set. Well, it kind of makes sense, but what happens when we want to look at 2 of these things at the same time? I would like to look at, I'd like to look at the subcategories that have profit over 5,000. And at the same time, I want to look at my subcategory filter here. I've created that filter as a top N filter. This is a top N filter. And I only want to look at the top 5 in that group. So we can take a look here. We can start filtering these, and I want to see 5 values, but I only see 4 values. You know, if I were to take a look at, if I were to include the false values, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values. That's this limit here, 5 values, but this value is wrong because it didn't meet the criteria. Well, here's what's going on here and how we have to deal with it. Both of these, the set and the top end, are calculated in the same step of the order of operation. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the way we calculate that. And we're going to calculate our, in doing our calculation, what we're going to do is we're going to use a fixed, we're going to use our, we're still going to keep this filter so that we can see subcategories that are greater than 5,000. We are going to then use a oops, sorry, I didn't want to do that one. I wanted to do this one. Okay. We're going to use a ranking formula. And this ranking formula is a table calculation. And if we were to look in table calculations and we were to look under ranking formulas, you can see all ranking, any sort of ranking is a table calculation. That's because we got to look across a table and we got to rank things that are in different positions in the table. So we're going to use that ranking function to create this rank. Now, that ranking function is calculated down here in step 10 of the order of operation. And we're going to talk more about about table calculations later. But just now, that rank is calculated after our sets are determined, after the context and dimension filters are applied. It's calculated way down here. So now we can come back into this and we can get all of our top 5 values that also meet the criteria that the profit is greater than $5,000. So sometimes you have to look at the order of operation. You have to say, well, what am I trying to do? And how am I going to make that calculation work, knowing that a couple of these values will be in conflict with one another? And all we did here is we said, well, I can get that ranking a couple of different ways. If I do it as a top-end filter, it's calculated in the same step as my my fixed LOD. But if I calculate it as a rank, it's calculated as a table calculation, and it's calculated later. Well, let's move on off of that and start looking at what happens when we fill that data structure with values and we start applying calculations and filters in the rest of the order of operation. And the first thing I want to make mention of, and I'm not going to go into it in detail here because I could spend the whole session talking about joining data tables together or data sets together, and blending being one way you can do that. But it's important to understand that data blending takes place in step 6 of the order of operation. And you've come back, and I see questions all the time. I said, I want to apply filters, and I wanted to apply across the blended data set. I want to apply in all the data sets that I'm blending. And you can see here that blending takes place after those filters are applied. Or I want to write a fixed LOD, and I'm getting this message that says all the dimensions in a fixed LOD have to come from the same data set. That's because the fixed LOD is calculated up here, and sets are determined up there, and top end are up there. So it's really important to understand when blending happens. And if you ask me those types of questions, the first thing I'm going to say is, well, how about creating a relationship or getting away from blending? If you can get away from blending, it's going to solve a whole lot of your problems. Okay, I'm going to move on now down to include and exclude. And I like to talk about include and exclude because they are the other types of LODs. They represent in total maybe 20, 25% of all LODs are written. Most of them are written as fixed LODs. And exclude might be 5% of LODs that are written, and the remaining are being include. Now, I'm going to tell you right up front, when I first started using include and exclude, they didn't do what I thought they did. So I had to spend a great deal of time understanding them. I want to look at the include function first. And we're just going to look at it very simply. I've just got this chart here. I've got the average sales. And this is nothing more than sales. And I'm taking the average of sales. And you can see what the average is by state, by region. And I've also created this include, nothing more than this. And you can see that, well, that and that are all the same, with the exception of the total down here. This total is actually the average of those values, okay? It's the average of those values, where this total is the average of the underlying data. It's the value of the individual records that make up each of those items. Now, let's take a look at the exclude function. And exclude, same function, except, there we go, except we're using exclude. And exclude, it says, well, if we don't include the state, go to the next higher level that's in the biz, which is the region level, and what's the total, excluding the detail associated with the state and the province. And the average of those, the average of that is this 215 215.8. Okay. I like to use these, and you say, well, I get questions all the time. They said, I'd like to be able to look at the individual item averages compared to the overall average of the total. Or I'd like to be able to look at the average of the individual states versus the average of the central region. Well, the average of the central region, for example, is right here. It's in the exclude statement, and the average of the individual items is right there as the include statement. So it's a perfect setup to do this, where I can use the include statement to get my individual items and the exclude statement to get the total. And this works on the individual states right along the line. This is a perfect example of using include and exclude. That gets a little messy, so we'll go back to central. Perfect example of when to use include and exclude. I want to move on now to totals and grand totals. And they're calculated down here in step 9 of the order of operation. And most new users, most users that I work with and see, have this sense that, oh, that works just like it does in Excel. I've got a column of numbers and I want to take the total, so I'm going to sum the total column just like I do in Excel. That's not the way Tableau works. Tableau calculates totals and grand totals in a separate module. And it's not looking at the visual. It's not looking at what you see on the screen in front of you, the aggregated data that you see in front of you. It's going back to the underlying data, that data table for the worksheet, and applying the calculation at that level and then bringing it to the visual. Everybody, I think, is pretty familiar with this. We can take a look at doing totals. All I've got here are total sales, and we can add in, off the Analytics tab, we can add in our subtotals or our total columns or our total rows. And it works just fine, just fine. We can also come back into these, and instead of using sum, we can use the minimum, for example. So now we've got the minimum value. See, here's the minimum of 15,000 and 15,801, 801. And you see when you do this, I get the minimum both horizontally and vertically. And before anybody asks, yes, I can do that over here too. I can do total using minimum. We can do maximum. Okay, we can do whatever. And the total works just fine. It does that automatically. But that may not be what you wanted to do. I've got an example here where I would kind of like to look at, let me see. Oops. Okay, what I'd like to do is I've got a quick table calculation that calculates the percent of total. And that calculation is determined at the category level. So if we were to take a look here, these values here are nothing more than the percent of sales to the total sales in the category. So you see they total 100% on the total for furniture and for office supplies and for technology. And that's how sales break down in each one of those categories by month. Well, that's pretty useful. That's really useful. But you know what I'd like to see is I'd kind of like to see the percent within each category, but I'd like this total in the category to be the percent of the grand total. I'd like that value to be the percent of this 161 divided by the 494, for example. And we can do that. We can do that with custom grand totals. And this looks busy. It is busy. And I'm going to make this bigger, but it's not quite as difficult as it seems. I'm going to just kind of fold that over. And all this says is if the max subcategory equals the min subcategory. Well, what does that mean? Well, if we were to take a look here on the chart here, the place where the maximum subcategory doesn't equal the minimum subcategory is here on the subtotal line in the total line. Okay, that's the case right at that line. If we're in this row of data, if you will, I want to take the fixed category year of order data, in other words, this value, and I want to divide it by the total for the year, or that value. That's all that formula says. And everywhere else, I want to take a look at the subcategory level. I want to take a look at the subcategory level, and I want to divide it by the total of the category. Okay. So when we apply that, hopefully we get the right, there we go. When we apply that, we can see that here on each one of the rows, we are getting the percent of total to the category total, but the category value is the percent of total to the total value. Now, I know that somebody's sitting out there and they're saying, hey, Jim, you're making this bit, it's not that difficult. I can come in here and I can put in size equals 1. And I can put that in and we can apply that. And lo and behold, we get something that's not what we wanted at all. Okay. What this, and I'm going to take that back one level. What we wanted were the totals on the individual categories to be the percent to the total overall. When you're trying to drill down deeper than the end line, the grand total, you'll find that doing the min and the max works better for you. Okay, I wanted to save time to talk about table calculations. And once again, I could do a whole series on table calculations. Let's take a look real quick on just basic table calculations and how table calculations work. I've got just sum of sales, and if we wanted to do a very simple, quick table calculation, we could take the percent of total, and we get the percent of total, and we say, well, wait a minute, this isn't what I really wanted to see. What I wanted to see is instead of going across the table, I wanted to go down the table. So whenever we're talking about table calculations, we're talking about two different concepts here. We talk about scope and we talk about direction. The scope is how much of the table is involved in the calculation, and direction is, are we going across or are we going down? And if you think about it, that's an awful lot like what you do in an Excel spreadsheet. You write a calculation in a cell, and then I copy it, and I'm either going across the columns or I'm going down the rows. So that should feel kind of familiar. Well, we wanted to go table down. And when we do table down, we can see that we get our percent of total going down the table, and it'll total 100% at the bottom. Now, I want to come back to this thought for just a second. Our table calculations are calculated down here in step 10 of the order of operations. They're calculated last in the order of operation. If I wanted to use the results of this table calculation in a fixed LOD, and we get the question all the time, I want to fix those values and I want to use them elsewhere. How could I go about doing that? And you say, well, you can't. They're down here and they've been done in step 10 of the order of operation. All my fixed LODs and all my other calculations were done someplace else. You know, fixed calculations are done in step 4. My other calculations are done up here, and you know, step 7, 8, 9, something like that. But my table calculations are done last. Well, how can I use those values elsewhere? Well, the only option available to you at this point is to use the results of those calculations in another table calculation. And it's important to remember we're working on the data table for a worksheet. And each worksheet has its own data table. So I can't take the results of a table calculation in one worksheet and use it in a table calculation in a different worksheet. That's a different data table altogether. So here I've got this is the percent of total calculation. When you do a quick calculation, percent of total, that's the calculation that's actually done, and total is a table calculation. And if you wanted to see all the table calculations, you can come out here and you can sort those, and total is a table calculation. We can see what total does. And it explains here what total does. Okay. I'd like to look at it at a running total basis. And what we would do here is we'd say, well, I want to do a window sum. I want to do a running calculation. I've chosen to use window sum. And I've taken my table calculation, which is an aggregate, and I'm using it here as the argument, and I'm going from the first down to the present cell. My starting position and my ending position. I'm going to go and calculate from the starting position to the ending position. So all we've done here is we're taking this value as the sum of those two values, and this value is the sum of these three values, the first position through the present position. So 23.2. And now we're adding 9.5 to that. And that's all this calculation does. But that's how you would calculate a running total. Well, as a last example, I want to show you a question often arises. Someone will say, well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to understand how I can rank my subcategories by year, by segment, and I'd like to see how that varies over time. Is there something I can use to do that? Well, yeah, there is. First, as we saw before, any sort of ranking calculation is going to be a table calculation. So I need to look above that level to look at combinations of subcategory segments in years, and I've done that with this LOD expression. Okay, so fixed order date, the year of the order date, the segment, and the subcategory sum of sales. And those are the numbers that you see there. And those are going to be calculated. Those are going to be calculated right up here in step 4 of the order of operation. Then I'm going to come back and I want to take that value and I want to use it in a ranking function. Okay, and we're going to just rank unique. This is a LOD, so the LOD itself is not an aggregate. We have to aggregate it. We want to rank unique the sum of that LOD, and I want it descending. And I'm going to apply that to my chart here. And I'm just going to apply it this way because it's easier to see. And now I get the rank by year of order date, by segment, by subcategory. And to make it a little easier to see, I would just put a little color code on here, where if the rank is 1, I color it gold and everything else is colored blue. So we're able to take this LOD and use it in a table calculation. We're not able to take the results of a table calculation and use it within an LOD, all because of the order of operation. Well, that's what I wanted to share with you today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen in just a second here. Everything I do is out on my Tableau public site. You can get there by going to jimdehner.com. That is my my blog site. And just real quick, and then we're going to go. I think I can do this real quick. Let's see if I can do this real quick. You should be able to see that now. You should be able to see my blog now? Yeah, I think you can. Yes. This is just my blog. It's just jimdehner.com. Okay. And you can go out to my blog, and anytime you go out there, everything I've done is out there. You can search here, or it connects to all my other sites. And you can go to Tableau Public, and the workbook we just looked at. If you go out to my Tableau Public site, here's my workbook we just looked at, and you can download it directly. Everything down there, everything out there is downloadable. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I think I have stopped sharing.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. Is anybody still awake? Wave at me if you're still awake. Okay, I'm glad you're aboard, guys.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing all those, especially I think include and exclude, it's always confusing. And using a perfect example to actually how we should be using it, and then the totals, I think that was great. And all of you, if you think some of the things were going above your head, it's fine, right? Like it's totally fine, because I know like not all the concepts you have already gone through, so it can be hard as well. But since it's recorded, and also we will have that help, so don't worry about that. But okay, for now, again, yes.
I see one question here. I want to address an Adrian Rest question. Example of sets and top end set need to add the rest of the filters into context. Once again, you decide as a developer when to apply the context filter and what to apply the context filters on. Okay, we get very often get questions that are fairly deep questions. They're fairly involved questions where I want to ignore, and that's like, for me, that's fingernails on the blackboard. You know, it's like, don't ever say that. I want to ignore a certain filter. Okay, well, you may want that filter applied as a dimension filter on one worksheet, and that same dimension be applied in context on a different sheet. And it takes some work to make that happen. So, but that's a fairly advanced topic. I'm sorry, I just saw that question come up. I wanted to address it real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think that's helpful, Jim. So all of you, like if you have any question, you can just raise your hand and you can ask away, because this is the right time if you want to ask anything. Okay. Go ahead, Omar.
I think one of the questions I've had is, particularly with the age of Gen AI in particular, I'm just wondering, is that going to affect the way that the order of operations format will sort of change, or will that sort of, or will it remain the same? Because I'm kind of interested with, I know that Tableau has introduced AI, so I'm just interested to hear.
Okay. Well, thanks for the question. This is a good question. I have mixed emotions about Gen AI and how to use it and when to use it. The very simple answer to your question is the order of operation is fundamental. It's one of the basic. I'm searching for a word. I'm not going to get it, but it is fundamental to the architecture of the way Tableau is developed and created. It is not changing. Okay, you go through that order of operation, and the way worksheets are created and the way data tables are created. That's as fundamental to the way Tableau works as just loading data into the data structure. AI is not going to change it. AI is going to work within that to do the sort. And yes, pretty soon I'll be out of a job, but AI is going to work within that in that order of operation to get you the answer that you want. That doesn't change. I remember back when I was in grade school. You know, they say add, subtract, multiply, and divide in that order, you know, all that stuff. That's the order of operation. And, you know, for basic arithmetic, the same thing happens with any order of operation. When you're coding, it's dropping down from the top to the bottom. Any other question?
Yes.
When I see something here, is there time when we cannot? Is there a time when we cannot use fixed to achieve the same result? Very good question. who raised this question. Very good question. The short, I'm going to flip your question around the other way. Okay. If you've ever seen a worksheet where they go fixed and there's a string of about 8 dimensions out there, and they go, there's order, date, segment, region, subcategory, and on and on and on and on. And they said, it's fixed and there's a lot of dimensions, some sales. What you're really doing, and I've got an article on my blog about LODs and understanding what you're doing with LODs. You're really creating another layer in your data set that's at a very low level. You could accomplish that same thing by using just an include statement and placing that include statement at the level that you want. For example, if you wanted at the highest level, you could say include year of order date. And then when you drill down in there, everything else would total up till you hit the year of order date. Then it would be fixed at the year of order date. Or if you wanted to go to a lower level, include category, which is under order date. I have two pieces on my blog that I would suggest that you look at. One is include and exclude and what they really mean. And the other one is LODs. And Steve came back. I can always count on Steve, making me honest. Steve came back and said, it's about getting an upgrade with tables, getting a filter at the data source level soon. This is pretty advanced, but will need to be included in our flows. I'm not sure I understand that. I don't know that I understand the comment, but whatever. Okay. I'm sorry. I went off on a tangent.
No, I think it's fine, and also the explanation towards that. And about the blogs, guys, there are so many blogs on Jim's website. One set of blogs that I'll recommend every one of you to go through is 0 to Zen. That's a list of 5 videos, and I'll share that link as well with all of you. So that's one of the best set of videos. All are like 40 minutes with like hands-on session kind of. You can just play it and do that. I think some of you might have already gone through it, right? I can see Kamal waving his head, so that's great. So I think that I'll send over to you. No worries. So any more questions? If you have, then we still have a few minutes. Otherwise, we are good.
I have one comment. If you go out to my blog, at the top of my blog, you'll see a site that says Beyond Getting Started. When maybe 2-3 years ago, Tableau made a fundamental change when they introduced relationships. And that change affected all of their training materials. Okay, and there used to be a button where you could punch up in the corner the free training, and you go out there and you could get free training and you could look at videos. Well, that button disappeared. You're not going to find that anymore. And I started seeing so many questions where people they just didn't understand the basics at all. That I wrote this other series, and it's 13 parts, but it starts out with Tableau is not a spreadsheet. Okay, and the reason I did that was because that button disappeared. It was like they didn't have even the most fundamental concept of what Tableau was. We had to start at a different level. So that will cover all the stuff that's in 0 to Zen, but it also covers stuff that used to be in the free training material that Tableau had available.
I haven't gone through it, but I just checked it out and it's actually great. So I'll share both of these links with everyone.
Yeah, I did some of those. I also did on YouTube, and if you're more that type of learner, the link for my YouTube is right out on my. If you go to my blog site, everything is linked together. You can go to my blog site, and it's on. Some of that stuff is on YouTube, which I'm not really all that good at, but I try. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to learn, there are lots of resources. Add a donate button.
Okay. Well, I enjoyed being with you today. I applaud what you guys are doing. I applaud anytime anybody's learning how to use Tableau, I applaud it, because the next thing you do is you start using Tableau and you start making different uses for it. I know some of you are very familiar with the unintended uses and unintended breakthroughs that come. A couple that I really like is some of the work that CJ has done with map layers. And all of a sudden, we're not talking about maps anymore. We're able to talk about laying different visuals on top of one another, using something that was designed fundamentally to do maps. So take the opportunity to experiment with stuff. Don't be. Yeah, I tell people all the time, you can't break it. There's nothing you can break out there. So go ahead and try it. And if it doesn't work, you learn something. If it does work, who knows? Next, you'll be writing a paper and speaking at a conference or something like that.
That's true. That's a great advice, because it's a software. You won't be like totally breaking it. So play it out in the best way you can. And guys, if it like all of you who can come on screen, like I can see most of us were already on screen throughout the session, but if more of us can come on screen, that will be great. I need to take a happy picture. Okay, I can see some of them. Steve is gone.
Steve, he didn't want his picture taken.
Okay, guys, smile if you want to wave some sign or everything. That's fine with me as well. I just want to see more happy faces. I can see Idris over here. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Taken. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you guys. I enjoyed being with you today. And if you have any questions, go out to the forum. There's some guys out there that know what they're doing. They can help you out.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. There's no end to asking help from the data farm community. So just ask away. And thank you again, Jim, for being here, taking this session. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Jim.
Bye. And guys, don't leave. I need to share something with you. How many of you are already on Twitter? Yeah. Okay. If you're not, then I would suggest you to be on Twitter, because LinkedIn is a place. Now we can see so many people posting visualizations, but it wasn't like that earlier. But still, if you go to Twitter, it's a whole different place. Actually, it doesn't has all that noise or like Reels or TikTok kind of show. Now it's again back in US, by the way. So, but
Are
let
they
me share
paying you?
It's still
I'm not really using that, but yeah, if I need, I have to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm already fine with 2 platforms. I don't think I can do more.
Yeah.
So just let me share my screen. And it's important, and some of you already are there. And if you're not, because I used to think that Twitter was mostly for celebrities or politicians. That's what it was for. But when I actually got to know about data farm, it actually changed the way. And I only use Twitter for data farm, Tableau, and visualization.
Yep.
Now, if you go through my feed, you will only see different blogs. Here it is Steve with some article and some of our arts I can't control. But then you will also find most of them visualizations, different events. Because see, these are the events we are doing internally just for you. But this is not it only. If you have hunger for learning, there is so many things. And these are all the people I'm following. So I'm seeing all these. But let's say if you are new, what you should do, then you don't need to do anything but search for hashtag DataFam. Now, the moment you will search for that hashtag DataFam, you will just see visualizations, blogs, or different Tableau user events that are coming up. So I suggest every one of you to get on Twitter, type this hashtag DataFam, follow these people who are building visualization, and just think of it as an Instagram. I think most of you must be using Instagram, right? So if you're using Instagram, spend, let's say, 15 or 20 minutes every day on Twitter with this hashtag, just for the sake of eyeballing it, what is happening. Now, what happens with this is, once you start seeing all these visualization, and when you're going to build your own, ideas will start coming to you automatically. It's like getting inspired every day. So make that a habit from now on. I wanted to speak about this earlier, but I wasn't. So I thought I should be sharing this. And this is such a good place. It's not competitive, but it's competitive as well. And you will see, like, if the Make Home Monday challenges, they start on Monday, the visualizations start flowing in, and just you will see only the people. You see, I'm scrolling, right? And all you can see is visualizations and blogs and all the things, right? Apart from some of what I can't control because of, I don't have premium. Okay, so here are some of the fancy, but okay.
So you got premium?
No, I don't got premium. I don't pay on these platforms. So
No, I mean, like, usually when I started, so I'm just following only Tableau people, so you just get only Tableau content. So
yeah,
yeah.
but you get ads as well, but that's fine. But still, it's a good place, and you will be actually connected with what's happening with Tableau, what's happening around Tableau, what are the different people who you should be connecting. Because see, learning is one thing, but one of the most important skill is being around the right people. That is one of the most important thing in these days, because skills is important, but you should be knowing who to reach out, who you should be connecting. Or let's say if you're looking for more job opportunities, when you will be eyeballing all this, even for 20 minutes a day, you will have lots of information. And that helped most of us, like me. 4 years ago, I was no one. And now with all this networking and everything changed. So that is one tip I would really recommend every one of you to start doing it from today. And I think that's it. I'll stop sharing my screen.
I think
Uh,
I mentioned this at the conference when I said, like, I like to do free stuff, and they're like, "What is this?" So like, I like to free likes, just to like other people
Mhm.
content, just
Right.
do a little reshare. So it's like, it's free, so just do it, because people are gonna see that you're following, you're just liking their content. So when they will see your content, so they're like, "Oh, I know this guy," like, and so yeah.
Yeah, it's mutual. Also, if you want yourself to be recognized down the line, then also, like as Adrian said, like interact, like push like or interact. But also, if you think some visualization is really cool, you like something about it, just push in some words, tell them what you feel about it. Because the more relationship you will build, the more it will be helpful for you in so many ways, right? And some of the downline become friends, brothers, like Lewis, uh, who is also one of the mentors. We met in the first conference, and we are like brothers. Adrian, like, we also met through this community, all of us. Most of us, we didn't even knew where we came from, and now we are like great friends. So that's the power of the community, and you need to leverage it as well, right? And some of you had questions, which I saw was around, let's say the Tableau fundamentals are pretty much easy. So should I skip that or not? I would suggest you to talk with your mentor, see what is possible. Okay, I'm not texting you, Steve. I've got other priorities as well. That's fine. Okay, so I was just coming to the point, like, if you have such questions that some of the topics you feel that you already know, give it a read, but then focus on most of the challenges, and also have these conversations with your mentors. They are there to help you out, so ask them away whatever questions you have. There will be 2 connects a month, but apart from that, still, if you're using Slack or WhatsApp, some of the groups are going to be on WhatsApp. That's totally fine with me. So it's the most important thing is you should be able to communicate with each other. That's the ultimate thing, right? So take that call and ask for help as much as you can. That is the whole reason of this whole program, right? It's not like I'm taking attendance, though I'm taking attendance as well, but it's not like I'm going to, what do we used to say in college, like debar you from exams, right? So it's not going to happen like that, but yes. And yes, all of you must be connecting, connect with each other on LinkedIn, on Twitter, right? Because it's a small group and you all are learning together, right? And yeah, Steve, you can speak up, okay? I don't mind.
But Steve is using LinkedIn, Twitter, because he's author and LinkedIn and so on.
First, I'll stop the recording because I
Oh,
think
not
we
any-
are,
okay.
yeah, because now we are going to the part where, okay, so thank you so much, everyone. I'm
Okay, guys.
stopping the recording, everyone.
Thank you.